In the following video, it's about 20-minute video, I purposely set myself off camera, partly because flies were bothering me here at sunset in the desert, down south of the Dead Sea in the Arava. You can kind of see. I'm going to sweep around this way to give you an idea, and we're staying at a settlement or kibbutz, actually right near a very ancient city of Tamar. And I tell you all about that in the video. I'm just swiveling around here. This is very informal. But I put myself off camera because I want you to have the view the whole time I'm talking, and then I show different maps and so on. And so just to explain, I'm able to center a camera, but I didn't want to center it, and so you can kind of see me, but more to the edge, sort of like this. But what I want you to do is to listen and to think and to kind of feel the area. And so what follows, I think you'll find very, very interesting in terms of information. So hello, everyone. I wanted to make this very informal video the last day I am in Israel. I've just finished leading a tour for 10 to 12 days from the far, far north of the country all the way down to the south. And I'm sitting here at a place in the Negev desert. In Hebrew, it's called the Arava, south even of the Dead Sea. Most tours go to Masada, which is about 3/4 of the way down on the Dead Sea. I'll show you a map in a minute. But we like to come down here to Blossoming Rose. There's a settlement, and there's a tell or an excavation here of Biblical Tamar. It's on the Madaba map. It's on other ancient maps. It's mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, even in the book of Ezekiel. It's the southern border of the land of Israel in ancient times. So it's as far south as you get before you actually leave the borders as they're designated in the book of Joshua and in some of the prophetic books like Ezekiel. And so this is like the last outpost if you're traveling down through the territory of what was Judah at the time. And we stay here 3 nights. It's a wonderful place. I set the camera away from the camp. It's mostly caravans, as the British call them, or trailers, but they've been fitted up with air conditioning and all the amenities. And so it's just amazing and wonderful out here. I've got a lot of flies around me. A couple of them might visit the lens while I'm making this video, and that'll make it all the more authentic. I don't have trained flies. They just do what they want. And I waited until sundown, partly because it's my last day, but also because this pink sky behind me is just so amazingly gorgeous. You're looking due west. The sun just dropped over those hills. Looking the other way is Jordan and the hills of Moab. So here I am sitting here, situated here, and wanted to talk to you a little bit about the tour we just did. We take about 30 to 33, 4 people, and we go all the way to the north, way up to the border, even the Syrian border, where the UN outpost is. And then there's Dan and Caesarea Philippi, mentioned in the New Testament and the Hebrew Bible, all the way down to this place. And then, as I said, we stay 3 nights here, and it's really amazing. I love it here. This porch that I'm sitting on is ours to use. We rent it out, so to speak, from Blossoming Rose for our own use. We've got it with all of our personal items inside. And we love coming here. We haven't been able to come during COVID for 2.5 years. And so it was really exciting to come here and be in this place again. And we just had a incredibly great tour. I'll lead another one in March. It'll have some of the same itinerary. If you go to blossomingrose.org, you can see the drop-down menu and hit tours, and this one's called Walking the Ancient Paths. I don't have it in front of me. I think it starts like March 21st or so. But take a look. Maybe some of you can come with me. I announced it just a few days ago on Facebook, and we already had 10 people sign up. And I'm only going to take 30, maybe a couple over 30. But I didn't want to talk so much about the tour as where I am and the significance of this place. This is a map that Ross Nichols commissioned, and Daniel Wright, who's a graphic artist, designs books and all kinds of visuals and maps. And I've had it rolled up, so it's going to be a little hard to show, but if you take a look there, and if it doesn't roll up too much, I can point out where we are, because this place, Biblical Tamar, is actually on the map. So if you can see that right there, there's the end of the Dead Sea. Masada's right there, so you can see we're all the way down. And this is the wilderness of Paran, and many identify Horeb or Sinai is right here. This is the site. I'll see what it says here on the map, where you can find it, Har Carcom, which is the site that Anati, the Italian archaeologist and scholar, identified years ago. It's right in the kind of panhandle here of the wilderness of Paran, which is mentioned as the place of the Exodus. Of course, people have all kinds of ideas of where the Exodus was, and some people don't even think it was. But the geography of the Torah and its various sources is quite interesting, and quite a few of us have, of my friends and associates who make these tours with me, we have studied these things, and we're very interested in this area. So the Arava is this Rift Valley, goes all the way to Africa, and that's where we get our word Arabia. But Arava is really the name in Hebrew. If you come to Israel, land at Tel Aviv at Ben Gurion Airport, and you tell a cab driver, I want to go to the Arava, he'll say, you want to go to the Dead Sea? You know immediately where it is. The way it comes up in the Hebrew Bible is a very important verse that is quoted in the New Testament in the Synoptic Gospels. Let's start with Mark, and Matthew and Luke are just rewritten Mark. John the Baptizer's out in the wilderness, and if you look up the idea of the wilderness, it's out in the Arava. He quotes Isaiah 40, verse 3, I'm the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord in the Arava, meaning right out in this Rift Valley. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the community rule, which gives the charter of the group, the beliefs, the basic constitution of the group that wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, they also say, we are preparing the way in the Arava, and they quote Isaiah 40, verse 3. That's one of the main connections between the Jesus movement, which is in the first decades of the 1st century AD, I'm swatting flies here, and very effective in terms of really being here, and the 1st century BCE movement of, I don't usually call them the Essenes, but let's just say the Dead Sea Scroll community. The Yakad is what they call themselves, or the Children of Light, or the People of the Way. A lot of association between the movements. I like Robert Eisenman's term, the Messianic movement in Palestine or in ancient Israel in the late Second Temple period. In other words, it's not a singular movement that people might associate with John the Baptist Jesus. There are precursors to that movement. On the tour, I can show you here's the Sea of Galilee, here's the Dead Sea, here's where I am right now, and we go all the way up past this up to Mount Hermon in the border of Israel and Lebanon in the Golan Heights. We do a big circle all the way, and then all the way down and back up, and I'll be leaving in the morning. So this area is very, very historic. There's one thing on the map here And again, I'm going to read it where if you're watching this video, you can zoom in and look at it. It's called the ascent of the Akrabim, the way of the scorpion. And it's just up here to the north. And there's no road in ancient times along the Dead Sea. In other words, today there's a modern highway with hotels along the way and spas and all kinds of recreational activities. But in the ancient world, you can't just drive down the Dead Sea. There are huge cliffs and the water is much, much higher. In fact, there's some markers along the way that the British put in around the year 1920 or so, and it's way up above the present level, and they said this is the water level. So this would have been filled up much more. And so the way to get down into the desert, down into the wilderness of Paran, where I think is the place that the sources in the Torah are really identifying as the place of Mount Sinai, or I prefer to call it Mount Horeb, the mountain of God as it's called in the book of Exodus, is down in from the highlands of Judea and the mountains through this scorpion's path right up here, and it empties out just about a mile up this road. So this is really sitting at the entranceway into the Arava, or the desert, or in this case the Negev, the desert, which makes it really significant. That means anybody coming down this way into the desert, into the Negev, below the Dead Sea, has to come down that path, that scorpion's path. It zigzags down. It's pretty treacherous. Today, of course, we take the modern highway, which also does a lot of zigzags. But if you think about stories in the Hebrew Bible, one of the main ones people remember is Elijah and how he journeys into the Negev, into the Arava, and he goes to Mount Horeb, or Mount Sinai, in the story in the book of Kings. So in that story, he would have been just up the road here. This would have been the last outpost to find water and have a settlement here, because the settlement over this way, there's the ruins of Biblical Tamar, and it dates back to the 10th century BCE. So as he would come down, he would have stopped here, Iravot, it was called in the book of Numbers, and it's a water source. There's a diary of Lawrence of Arabia from the 1900s, right around just at the end of World War I. 1917 is when the British came into this area, went up to Jerusalem and defeated the Turks. So around that time, just before that, Lawrence of Arabia comes up from Arabia, from Jordan, and he mentions stopping right here at the spring. It's just a few hundred yards from where I'm sitting. I could give a tour of it in the future, and we have some video we can also put up. But I want to just sit here and let you see the sunset. There is a mountain behind me. We locally just call it Prayer Mountain. We like to climb it in the morning or in the evening. You get this incredible view south into the wilderness of Paran, looking out this way. I know the map is blowing around. Like I said, this is an informal video, flies and all, but I think you all will enjoy it. And at this point, it gets very, very still. If I quit talking, a car just pulled in, some of the staff that's working here, but the group is gone. Now listen, I'm going to be quiet. I can hear some tires of a truck on the highway. And I'm not sure what the microphone will pick up, but it gets very, very silent. I'm sure many of you have been in various deserts of the world. That's the pull of the desert, to get away from civilization, to go away into the desert. And as long as you have food, water, and shade, you can have the desert experience in a positive way. And so here we are at the very edge of the ancient land of Israel. I personally think, and those of you who know me know I like to speculate a little bit, I personally think that when Paul says, I went into Arabia in the book of Galatians, he's not talking about Saudi Arabia. That doesn't even make sense. And that would just be modern readers that would think that. It should be, I went into the Arava. He went into this desert area. This is the Arava, down by the Dead Sea, and even south of the Dead Sea. And he also says in the same letter, now Mount Sinai is in Arabia. So a lot of people have read that and they said, oh, Paul thinks you go on down the Sinai Peninsula, cross over into Saudi Arabia, and that's become a really popular site for Mount Sinai because Paul said it's in Arabia. But he's actually talking about it being in the Arava. And I think Paul might have retreated down here. He would have come down the serpent's path. That's really the only way to effectively get down here, unless you go all the way to the Mediterranean and come across that way. And if you're coming from Damascus, which is the report we get in the book of Acts, and he also mentions it in 2 Corinthians being in Damascus, that he would have come right down that path, that road, that twisting road, stopped here, and I think gone on down into the desert. And he had a lot to think about. I actually put this in my book. Some of you have, Paul and Jesus. There's a section, as I was writing the book, I started thinking about the term Arava, and if Elijah went to Sinai and Horeb, Paul too, and why don't we throw in Jesus as well? Everybody assumes in the Gospel of Mark we get this tradition that after Jesus' baptism by John the Baptizer, he goes into the wilderness to face a temptation, a series of temptations. They're elaborated by Luke and Matthew. Not interested here in the elaboration, but just the idea of the itinerary. But it doesn't say the wilderness of Judea. For years I remember teaching, and I would say, well, students, he went into the wilderness of Judea, which would be way, way up. Actually, on the map, here's Jerusalem way up here. It would be somewhere over here. I think he's down in here, in the Arava. It makes sense. Maybe he also went to Mount Horeb in the wilderness in the Arava. Who knows? Either way, this is the crossroads. The spice trade came in right through here. There's a Roman tax station just up the serpent's or the scorpion's ascent. And it's just, I've been to Masada, so I got the scorpion, the serpent trail and the scorpion trail in my brain floating around. But this we call the scorpions trail, which makes more sense down here in the desert where there's scorpions. But it twists around, that's the idea, and it's treacherous. So, who knows, but the spices come by, traders come by, Lawrence of Arabia, Elijah, Paul, Jesus, who else? Jeremiah, I think, he mentions going down to Egypt, and he's up in the Jerusalem area again, coming on down. This is the last stop. If you want to get water and head into the desert to the south, you're going to stop here. So if you want to go on, this is not a promo for the tour, but I'll say this, if you want to go on this tour in March, we'll stay here 3 nights. And even though we stay in nice hotels in the Galilee, on the Sea of Galilee, and Jerusalem, and on the Mediterranean, most people prefer the ruggedness of this camp. It's at the end of the tour, we bond together, we build a fire, we sit around, we talk, and we've been together for 10 days at that point. So you can imagine what it's like. It's just amazing. The stars be coming out in a few hours. It's a little cloudy tonight, but the clouds always go away. We've been watching the moon every night. And I'm always sad to leave this place. I feel right here on this porch, I've spent so many hours and so much time. When I'm digging in Jerusalem, I come down here on the weekends and I just sit here. Now, it's 110 degrees in the summer when we're digging, but I'm able to actually go inside and be in air conditioning. I'm signaling to somebody that I'm filming here. So it's just absolutely amazing, and I just wanted to share it with you all. And climbing that mountain that we call Prayer Mountain is just very, very exciting as well. So I'm going to put this up on YouTube. Haven't posted much lately. Get ready, because November is going to be the month. By the way, I brought the Myth Vision host, Derek Lambert, and the Gnostic Informant host, Neil Sindlak, with me on this trip. Ryan, Derek's wife, came with him, and they left last night. But you're going to get just a fire hose of material from them, and I know some of you follow them as well, and we'll be cross-posting things, and I've got a lot of new material. I've been finishing up a book project and some filming, and I wanted to get this tour under my belt. But now, November on, it's going to be YouTube City for me, and just so many things I want to share with you people, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, take care. Lehitra Ode, as we say, until I see you again. Greetings from the Arava, from Ir Avot, or Biblical Tamar.